What's up everyone and welcome back to the World History Channel. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button today. Let's get started. This is the history of the first Renaissance fair before pickle priests and jousters. What started out as a California school fundraiser in the 1960s turned into a national escape into the past. The Renaissance fair's illustrious past and their unique blend of community, theater, and fantasy are described here. Millions of Americans congregate in bustling Elizabethan fantasylands each year as the weather warms. While watching jousts and cheering huzzah, they eat huge turkey legs and drink mead. For their preferred candidates, for falconry shows, they crowd into amphitheaters, and in a fictional 16th-century English village, they bow to kings and queens in turn. While smartphones record the entire scene, swaggering pirates, glittering fairies, clanking swordsmen, courtly ladies, and occasionally a man in a Deadpool costume weave their way through crowds. Naturally, it is the Renaissance Fair. In the United States, there are dozens of fairs, each with its own distinct regional flavor. Pirates are celebrated in Pensacola, Florida, while a festival in Arizona boasts its very own London Bridge made from pieces of the original structure built in the 19th century to span the River Thames. In typical Lone Star fashion, the Texas Renaissance Festival is the nation's largest, hosting 500,000 visitors every year. However, the countercultural hub of Laurel Canyon, California, is where turkey legs and corsets became a beloved American tradition. The Soviet Red Scare and the burgeoning resistance to the stifling conformity of post-war America fueled the artistic genesis of the Renaissance Pleasure Fair, which was the first of its kind. Lots of people have told me over the years that they felt like they had found home, says Kevin Patterson, whose parents Phyllis and Ron Patterson founded the original festival. For them, the white picket fences, men carrying briefcases, and women wearing aprons of 1950s America were not satisfying. The Renaissance Fair's legacy as a haven for creativity, self-expression, and inclusivity continues in this way today. Here's how it all started. The first Renaissance Fair was established. Phyllis Patterson took interactive learning to a whole new level when she founded the first Renaissance Fair in May 1963. As historian Rachel Lee Rubin recounts in Well-Met Renaissance Fairs and the American Counterculture, the educator got the idea for the Ren Fair while running an after-school program teaching kids about theater history. Commedia dell'arte, an Italian Renaissance form of popular outdoor entertainment, was particularly popular with her students. Her son, Kevin, who maintains an archive of fair history and has taken over for his now-deceased parents in running San Francisco's Great Dickens Christmas Fair, says that she wanted to get people out of the classroom and into this other imaginative realm. In 1994, the Renaissance Pleasure Fair was sold by the family. Kevin describes the opening of the first Renaissance Pleasure Fair in May 1963, which was organized by Phyllis and her husband Ron Patterson as a fundraiser for the progressive radio station KPFK-FM. This was where a lot of the artistic community in Los Angeles gravitated, and she thought it would be a good demographic for what she was doing creatively. According to Patterson, they looked at the 16th century spelling of the word fair, which was fair, and they thought it would be misunderstood. The spelling of fair was an attempt to be authentic while still appealing to modern audiences. So, they tweaked the spelling to make it feel archaic, but still legible for the times. From the beginning, the Renaissance Pleasure Fair established its reputation as a counterculture event. An early participant, Alicia Bay Laurel, told Rubin that the fair brought lefties, artists, longhairs, and eccentrics out of the shadows to play together under the trees. This atmosphere was largely shaped by the artistic and cultural climate of California in the early 1960s. Cold War paranoia and the House Un-American Activities Committee's attempts to root out subversive citizens had hit Los Angeles hard. The committee was particularly focused on Hollywood, requesting testimony from prominent entertainers regarding alleged communist influence on the film industry. Many people who lean left struggled to find work as a result of the industry's fear and chilling atmosphere. Many of those creatives gave their time and talents to pull off that first fair. According to Patterson, those individuals volunteered to assist in the production of papier-mâché banners, masks, and other distinctive decorations. The fair was just instantly very, very beautiful and complex visually. It was also a novel participatory theater experience that combined historical reenactment and interactive performances with audience members from the beginning. The whole event allowed visitors to immerse themselves in an imagined Elizabethan world, and watching commedia dell'arte in something like its original context dissolved the typical boundaries between show and audience in ways that fit well with the emerging counterculture. The 1963 festival lasted just a weekend and raised $6,000, but would set the tone and the visual language for the cultural explosion that would follow. The development of the fair, the Renaissance Pleasure Fair, grew quickly and spun off from KPFK, moving to a second location. The festival's world got deeper and bigger. For example, a series of performers' guilds dedicated to archetypes like jesters and peasants appeared year after year. The Pattersons even started a non-profit called the Living History Center to share the educational and theatrical techniques they had developed. And unaffiliated festivals began to spring up across the country, some establishing permanent fairgrounds, including the Texas Renaissance Festival in 1974, which now claims to be the nation's largest. The Renaissance Pleasure Fair's early years played a role in the American craft revival, and now an entire ecosystem of artisans and vendors has developed to serve the growing fair circuit. The fair marketplaces provided a special space for traditional crafts like leatherworking, blacksmithing, and glassblowing, and businesses sprung up to provide attendees with elaborate costumes. Numerous fairs loosened their attempts to recreate 16th-century England as the idea spread throughout America and the world. However, the importance of the playful, immersive quality remained. In 1979, a local festival organizer told the New York Times, "We're not kidding when we say all the fair is a stage." For instance, costume was a major part of the experience from almost the beginning, with attendees arriving in period attire. As a result, the Renaissance Pleasure Fair and subsequent events served as a crucial starting point for the development of cosplay and live-action role-playing, or LARP, and served as a base for fans of fantasy. Families from multiple generations have participated in their local Renaissance festivals. One of them is Sue Honors. "You know how some families play soccer? My family is decent." In the early days of the fair, her mother worked as an artist. Honor has been a guild master and performer at the Renaissance Pleasure Fair for a long time. Now, her own daughter and granddaughter are helping to make the fair magical. Over the years, fairs have expanded to include more of the world. As attendees continue to help shape the character of the adored seasonal event, Ming Dynasty costumes now appear alongside Elizabethans. Why we keep coming back to the Renaissance Fair more than half a century later? The Renaissance Fair continues to thrive in the digital age. Patterson asserts that there are decreasing numbers of activities to which we are able to devote ourselves that do not involve a screen. One of them is the Ren Fair. However, that doesn't mean the fair has no online following. In a video that went viral on Instagram, a group of women dressed as rats scamper around the Renaissance Pleasure Fair, offering flea stamps as plague to their fellow attendees. That trio of plague rats exemplify the significance of play and interaction to the fair even after all these decades. The friends have been going to the fair together for a long time. "We were positively overwhelmed by how many people wanted to play along with this," said Kelsey Warmer, a Los Angeles voice actor and content creator. The idea started with her friend Samantha, who specifically wanted an interactive costume and landed on rats. Their friend Chloe adapted a pattern from an online creator, Cardboard Adventures, to create masks. They hadn't even made it through the gate before the first person excitedly approached them for a stamp. According to Walmer, when you go to the Renaissance Fair, there is so much action and play that you want to hug the queen and cheer on the joust. "Can we give you the plague if we approach you and declare that we are plague rats?" People went, "Absolutely." They intend to return as rats the following year with additional friends. From its inception to the present day, the Renaissance Fair has been appealing because it provides a venue for creativity and individual expression, whether that means lacing oneself tightly into a corset, sweeping the fair's dusty streets in a cloak, strapping on a sword and outrageously flirting all day, or making a cardboard rat mask. Every time someone comes, they can reinvent themselves in any way they want. Patterson asserts that personal expression is uncommon in our world. With its cacophony of clanking armor, savory aroma of giant turkey legs, and vibrant tapestry of pirates, peasants, and nobles mingling in the summer sun, the contemporary Renaissance fair feels like an old American tradition. However, neither a meticulously planned historical society nor a corporate boardroom produced this adored phenomenon, which now attracts millions of attendees to dozens of annual events nationwide. Its beginnings are much more whimsical, radical, and closely associated with the social and artistic upheaval of California in the 1960s. Before the term Ren Fair conjured up images of pickle-obsessed priests, jousting knights on insurance-approved steeds, and anachronistic Deadpool sightings, the event started out as a modest but incredibly ambitious school fundraiser. It was a living, breathing piece of interactive theater designed to break down the walls of the classroom and the stifling conformity of post-war America by providing a temporary escape into a past that was the first Renaissance fair was a story of pedagogical innovation, countercultural expression, and a longing for community that tapped into a deep national desire for fantasy, authenticity, and creative belonging. This ultimately led to the birth of a singular cultural movement that continues to thrive more than 50 years later. The genesis of this national escape into the past lies with Phyllis Patterson, a passionate educator from the artistic enclave of Laurel Canyon, California. Phyllis discovered in the early 1960s that the improvisational, mask-based theater form known as commedia dell'arte, which flourished during the Italian Renaissance, particularly captivated her students while she was running an after-school program that was centered on theater history. This was not theater as a passive spectator sport, it was vibrant, rowdy, and interactive, performed in open marketplaces and town squares, directly engaging the audience. In Well-Met Renaissance Fairs and the American Counterculture, historian Rachel Lee Rubin describes how Phyllis was motivated to go beyond the limitations of the classroom. She wanted to get people out of the classroom and into this other imaginative realm, according to her son Kevin Patterson, who now runs an archive of fair history. This was not to be a dry historical reenactment but an immersive experience, a participatory playground where the lines between performer and audience, past and present, were deliberately blurred. In May of 1963, Phyllis and her husband, Ron Patterson, transformed this vision into reality. They put on the first Renaissance Pleasure Fair as a way to raise money for KPFK-FM, a progressive Los Angeles radio station supported by listeners. The choice of beneficiary was very important because KPFK was a place where the city's artistic, intellectual, and left-leaning community congregated. Exactly the kind of people Phyllis thought would like her creative, nonconformist project. The name itself, with its dated spelling of fair, was a deliberate act of world-building. They looked at the 16th century spelling of fair, but they were afraid it would be misinterpreted, as Kevin Patterson points out. Fair achieved the perfect balance by remaining accessible to a contemporary audience while still conveying the idea that this was a place where fantasy and history would collide. The event, which took place over a single weekend on a large ranch in North Hollywood, was a daring experiment. The setting was created by a volunteer army of artists, actors, and craftspeople, many of whom were themselves victims of the Hollywood blacklist and the lingering paranoia of the Red Scare, and were looking for a new outlet for their stifled creativity. There were no permanent structures. The setting was made up of makeshift stages, colorful banners made of papier-mâché, and handcrafted decorations. It is impossible to overstate the cultural context of this first fair. It was born at a precise moment of American transition, poised between the rigid conformity of the 1950s and the explosive counterculture of the late 1960s. The fair was a clear rejection of post-war suburbia's white picket fences, men carrying briefcases, and women wearing aprons for the artists and early attendees. It was a space where lefties, artists, longhairs, and eccentrics, as early participant Alicia Bay Laurel described, could come out of the shadows to play together under the trees. During the Middle Ages, when classical pagan symbols were systematically reinterpreted through a Christian theological lens, the siren's great transformation from a birdwoman of death to a fish-tailed temptress of sin began in earnest. It's likely that multiple traditions were combined in this shift in iconography. Triton and other sea gods existed in the classical world, so the siren's inherent connection to the sea made the evolution into an aquatic form logical, if not inevitable. However, the decisive influence was the rich corpus of Celtic and Northern European folklore, which was filled with stories of merfolk and water spirits, often possessing a dangerous and alluring quality. Stories such as Saint the Irish monk Brendan the Navigator, who lived in the 6th century and went on a mythical journey when he met a beautiful fish-tailed creature who tried to seduce him, was the ideal vehicle for transforming the traditional siren. In these Celtic tales, the mermaid seamlessly adopted the Greco-Roman counterpart's symbolic role. With this new fish-tailed form came a radical reinterpretation of the siren's symbolic meaning. The medieval Christian siren's temptation was overwhelmingly sexual, whereas the Greek siren's was intellectual and glorious. In a worldview that framed earthly desires, especially sexual desire, as a dangerous snare diverting the soul from its path to God, the siren became the perfect allegory for the deceitful and destructive nature of sin. The fleeting pleasure of worldly indulgence was represented by her beautiful face and captivating song, while the spiritual corruption and damnation that followed was represented by her hidden, monstrous lower body. The Divine Comedy, written in the 14th century by Dante Alighieri, is where this new siren finds her most well-known literary form. Dante describes a stuttering woman, with squinting eyes and crooked on her feet, with maimed hands and pallid in her color, in his dream in Purgatorio. But when he looks at her, she changes into a beautiful siren, singing, "I am the pleasing siren, who in mid-sea leads mariners astray," which captivates him. Dante's guide and reason, Virgil, intervenes and tears open her clothes to reveal her belly, whose stench awakens Dante from his stupefied trance. Only then does her hideous nature become apparent. The beautiful appearance of the siren conceals a rotten core, a direct representation of the medieval Christian belief in the deceitfulness of fleshly pleasure. Here, the siren is the symbol of sinful temptation. In the art of the 19th century, this image of the siren as a dangerously sexual being reached its peak. The Victorian era, with its strict public morals and intense private ostentation, was obsessed with the femme fatale, or fatal woman, who could destroy men with her beauty. The theme was used repeatedly by artists like John William Waterhouse, Edward Armitage, and Gustave Moreau. Waterhouse's 1900 painting The Siren is iconic. A pre-Raphaelite beauty with lavish, flowing hair and creamy skin perches on a rock, playing a lyre and gazing down with a mixture of cool detachment and possessiveness at a handsome, shipwrecked sailor who looks up at her with an expression of terror and rapt fascination. The archetype's complete transformation is captured in the painting. This siren is no longer a birdwoman associated with funerary rites. She is a classic mermaid, and her weapon is her overt, almost confrontational sexuality. She is no longer tempting Odysseus with tales of the Trojan War. She is tempting the sailor with the promise of her own body, a promise that the viewer understands leads to a watery grave. The sultry mermaids of contemporary film, animation and literature, whose danger is intrinsically linked to their sexual allure, are the direct ancestors of these Victorian sirens. The siren has undergone yet another transformation in the 21st century, escaping the confines of narrative to become a diffuse but potent cultural aesthetic. On social media platforms like TikTok, the term siren core has been used to describe a fashion and beauty trend that was inspired by the mythical creature. Iridescent scales, accessories made of seashells, wet look hair, makeup that looks like water droplets, and a general aura of mystical, otherworldly allure are all part of this style. The original siren's association with death is largely absent in its current form. The siren of today is a figure of strength and awe-inspiring beauty. She is the fantasy of possessing a power so potent that it can effortlessly captivate and command attention, and of being irresistibly desirable. This reflects a cultural moment in which female sexuality is increasingly viewed as a source of personal agency rather than just a danger or sin, even though it is still complex and often contested. The ability of the contemporary siren to captivate and entice a digital audience is her carefully curated online persona, or song. However, even in this sanitized appearance, the ancient threat persists. Despite her glitz, the social media diva still engages in some form of seduction. The promise is now validation, community, and an idealized identity, not knowledge or sex. The potential for a different kind of oblivion, a loss of self in the pursuit of likes, follows, and an unattainable aesthetic, is a modern parallel to the fate of the mesmerized sailors of old. The siren's enduring power lies in this very adaptability. She is a mirror, She represented the fear of losing one's heroic identity and nostos to the lure of passive knowledge for the ancient Greeks. She represented the terror of the flesh and the seductive path to sin for medieval Christians. She reflected Victorian anxieties and fascination with unrestrained female sexuality. She also brings the complex desire to be seen, desired, and transformed into something magical and powerful to the digital age, pointing out the potential dangers of becoming lost in that very pursuit. The siren song is our own song, and it has always been our own song. A melody of the things we most desire and most fear, a timeless refrain about the perilous, beautiful, and ultimately human journey between the two. The siren song is still audible today on smartphone screens as well as on funerary markers from ancient Greece.